Welcome to A Dose of Feeling. I'm Mushka, just a real human navigating the beautiful chaos of life. This podcast is about keeping it real, sharing my highs, lows, and the lessons that shaped me. It's a mix of stories, inspiration, and honest conversations, like chatting with a friend who just gets it. So get comfy and let's dive into this journey together. Let's feel it all.
Hello, welcome to another episode. I'm so happy you're here. And I feel like there's no better time than to talk about mental health. Whew, it's been a long ride for me. My history with depression, anxiety, medication has really taken me for a ride. And I want to share a little bit about that, breaking the stigma, the lessons I learned along the way, and maybe, just maybe, someone will take something from it. So, as a teenager, I was sent away. I wasn't sent away. I was sent to a different city for high school, and I was 12, and it was really hard. I was really, really down, unhappy about it. I struggled with depression. I was very, very anxious. It was a time in my life where I couldn't even walk outside the street down the street without feeling like this inner panic attack. People were looking at me. What are they thinking? What are they seeing? I just wanted to bury myself anytime I was standing outside. And it was a really, really hard time. And for quite a few years there, my teenage years, I really, really struggled, and I would see a therapist who, I don't know, wasn't that great, and I would try and find ways to take care of myself. I would blast music and dance in my room, and I would collect these sticker books that felt very gentle for me, and I really, really, really tried to take care of myself, but the voices in my head were so loud. And I thought that when I just leave this place, when I go back to my family, when I move on with my life, everything will be okay. Funny, that is not how the brain works. And it kept following me. It kept following me, and I allowed it to. I allowed it in, and I just took it. The anxiety was crippling. The depression was painful. And I moved to America when I was 19, and I was kind of in the dating world, and I felt so good. I felt really free. I felt really independent, and I just wanted to get married. And I did. I found my husband. He was incredible. And the beginning was really, really fun and nice. And a few months in, I started feeling this depression creep back, and I would cry myself to sleep at night, and I would never tell him, and I would never say anything. I felt so lonely, and I didn't understand why. I was far from my family. My family was in Australia. I was pretty homesick, but I kept telling myself, I have this husband who we love each other so much. I have this amazing life that we're about to build together. Why is my brain making up so many stories? I just couldn't understand it. And I sat in it, and I in a way, I loved it. I loved sitting in all that pity, and it was so familiar. It was very, very familiar for me, and comfortable in a way. And I would put on a brave face, but then I would just, one thing would really set me off. Let's say, I remember at the beginning, my husband sometimes would roll over and not say goodnight. And I would cry and cry and cry and be like, oh my gosh, my life is falling apart. And after my first son, during my pregnancy with my first child, I had prenatal depression, is it called? And I was pretty depressed. There were some pretty significant events before my pregnancy and during my pregnancy that I wasn't processing, and it was really hard for me. My pregnancy was hard, just emotionally, but it was beautiful. I lived such a good friend. you would never know. I loved my life. I was happy on the outside. I was so positive. But deep down, I was in pain. And after my son, I had postpartum depression. It was really bad. I cried all the time. I really just wanted to end my life many times. And I saw a therapist, and she put me on medication, on Lexapro. And it was good. It helped, but it really numbed a lot. And so I wasn't really able to feel anything other than just like okay and contentment. I was happy. I loved my son. I loved my marriage. We were doing good. But I kind of felt like this underlying okayness. And that is how I lived for many years. And over the years, I worked with different therapists and psychiatrists to try and move things around with my medication, different medications, different dosages, on and off. Sometimes I was so sick of that world that I tried myself to wean off it and try different things and try herbal remedies. But there was something in me that was so reliant on it. I kept needing it and going back to it, and I would go off it and things would get worse, and I would go back, and I couldn't really figure it out. And so I lived with this okayness. I didn't have high days. I just had okay days and sad days. My anxiety was terrible. I was anxious all the time. Everything was anxiety provoking. Everywhere I went, social interactions, public settings. I remember once my husband was like, everywhere I go, you have to hide behind me in a way. And I'm like, shoot, didn't realize you noticed. But yeah, I don't want to be seen. So much is scary to be seen. And so I hid behind that. I hid behind that mask of like, it's easier to just be small. And when I started this healing journey that I did like 5.5 years ago, I realized that I noticed my depression and my anxiety and where it was coming from and the way I was really allowing it to take over my life. I was choosing to settle into that comfortability of medication is protecting you. You don't really have to look at so much, and it is what it is. And over the last 5.5, 6 years, I've taken a good look at where all of these things have stemmed from, how I have allowed it to take over my brain, how much I believe those narratives. I truly believe, and maybe this is controversial because I remember hearing it when I was deep in my depression, and I was like, that's BS, stop saying that. But I truly believed that my brain is telling me things that aren't real, and I have the ability to not choose to believe it. And I didn't know that. And I really had to work on rewriting those narratives. What am I believing? Why am I believing it? And why am I allowing it to take over my life? Same with my anxiety. What is it about these fears that are so hard for me to face, to confront, to look at, to allow to rule my life? It took a long time of unlearning and relearning those narratives. And another thing I'm going to add here is that I worked as a therapist for many years, and I would see people who would come to me with very similar struggles, and I saw so much of myself in them, and I learned so much from them. But I really wanted to tell them so much more than I could. As a therapist, there's only so much you can really say. People were coming and telling me, I can't find joy, I can't feel joy. And I tried to use the things that helped me, but I wasn't fully aware of it enough myself in order to help others. And my years of education was only so good until my experience was able to kick in and say, wow, now I can understand. Now I can help you. And that was so beautiful for me to finally give and to be for others. A couple years ago, my husband got into plant medicine, and it really helped him with his addiction, and so many areas of his life and our life. And at the time I was working with a functional doctor, holistic practitioner, and this was 2 years ago. And I told her, like, I'm on antidepressants and I'm really struggling still, but I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm okay. It'll be okay if this is how things are. And many psychiatrists told me you'll be on medication for the rest of your life, and I was like, okay, I guess it is what it is. But I always wanted more. I wanted to feel more, and it wasn't allowing me to. And at a certain point, the medications weren't even really helping me, and that's when I started turning to this holistic practitioner, because I was like, help me. I'm okay taking these medications. I have nothing against taking medications when I need to, but it's not even doing anything for me anymore. And so why? Why am I taking something that makes me still feel not great? For what? And there are so many side effects, like libido and weight gain and appetite and just mood swings, and was really coming out of it that was not good. So my holistic practitioner, Hilda, she's incredible, so inspiring. We worked together for a lot, and one day she suggested to me, have you ever thought about microdosing psilocybin? And I was like, no. My husband's in the plant medicine area right now, but I don't know about that. And she's like, well, there are a lot of studies and research of how the psilocybin can kind of rewire your brain cells and get them back to their original settings. And so I started doing research, and it was a little funny. Like, I was looking for them in the scientific journals, and the scientific studies aren't really going to show a lot of plant medicine, and things aren't approved and things aren't legal. And I really wanted to trust it, and I felt this calling, like it was telling me. And that, by the way, I know this isn't a plant medicine episode, but a big thing about plant medicine is it needs to call you. It really needs to call you. And if anyone tells you that you need to do something or you try something, don't listen, because it will call you, and you will know when you feel that calling. And so she suggested it, and I was thinking, and I was researching, and I waited a little, and then one day I felt this calling that, let's see, it doesn't hurt. And she put me on a protocol of a microdose protocol where you do like 3 days on, 5 days off, or 4 days on, 3 days off, and you do this protocol. And the thing about when people say, microdosing or mushrooms or psilocybin or plant medicine is that they think you're always high or like in the clouds. And the point of microdosing is that it is so minute and gentle and so little in its effect that you barely notice it. Or at least when I first started that microdose, it was so small in its effect that I didn't notice anything was happening. Every day I took it, I'm like, what is this doing? And I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep trusting it. And it really took about a couple of months for me to look back and be like, wow, these 2 months, I have felt the best I have ever felt. I have gone through so many insights. I have worked through so much. I feel so happy. I feel less anxious. I feel so calm around people that I usually didn't feel calm around. I felt so safe in places. And I realized it wasn't a day-to-day thing. It was an overtime thing where my brain was slowly clicking back into its original birth place of this is what a healthy, normal brain is meant to be like without all the garbage in there. And it just felt so good. And so what I did was, what Hilda helped me with was doing a little bit of microdosing while slowly weaning off the Lexapro. And I did that for a few months. And then at a certain point, I ran out of my Lexapro and I had to get a new refill, but I had to make an appointment to get another refill. I was like, you know what? Let me see what it's like to stop altogether. I had already gone on a lower dose. I felt pretty comfortable, pretty safe about it. And I did that. And I microdosed my way through the weaning. I wasn't feeling any kind of high, quote unquote, on the microdose. It was very, very light. And eventually I came out on the other side, and you don't microdose forever. And I stopped microdosing after a few, maybe 6 months or so, and I wasn't on anything. And I was like, what is happening to me? I feel the best I've ever felt. I feel like this has literally changed my brain. I can hear my head and listen and talk and understand it without all that like garbage that it was feeding me. And I felt so good and empowered and really free in many ways. I find that the medication, the Lexapro I was on, and my mental health struggles were really taking over my life for 20 years. And it was really hard. And so that was how I came into that space of really, plant medicine will probably be another topic now that I've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I find that also that was my introduction into plant medicine world. I really started to trust that God put plants on this earth for a reason to really help and heal. And it changed my view on it. Like I said, my husband was already dabbling in plant medicine and healing, and I've really healed and changed so much of his life. And I was really wary. I was really hesitant. And this kind of opened a small door for me that was like, oh, Mushka, maybe it's time to be a little bit more open-minded about this and see what it can do for you. And that has really been a huge fundamental piece of my healing mentally, physically, emotionally. And I will say as well that, I get sad, I have hard times, I get anxious, but it's nowhere near as how intense it used to be and how powerfully it controlled my life. And today when I feel sad, I honor that. I feel sad. I have control over that feeling. I can allow it to come and sit with it and listen to it. And I could never do that. It was way, way too overbearing and too messy in my head. When I'm anxious, I say, okay, what is it? What's the fear? Am I going to step through it? Am I going to come out on top of it? Or am I going to let it control me? And sometimes I do. Sometimes I say, yep, that's too hard right now. I can't face that. I definitely have become so much more confident in public settings, with my husband in public. I'm like, I take the stage and he just, and it's not even an outward thing. It's not like someone would look at me and be like, oh wow, you're so loud. No, I'm still gentle and quiet and soft-spoken. I still like to be introverted at times. It's just internally, I have become so loud inside. It's become so much more confident inside of me. And, being in public, that comes out. That internal power comes out and really allows me to stand tall. And I'm really, really grateful for that. I have a message I want to share with those of you who are experiencing any type of mental health struggle. I know how hard it is to be in there. And the point of this episode is not to tell you what to do or how to do it or how to get out of it. My message is to honor yourself with gentleness and compassion. Trust your journey, trust the process, and know that if you want to be okay, you will be okay. And I know many people, and I don't blame them, it was me for a long time, who choose to sit in what they have, and they get so stuck in it that there's no way to get out of it. at the same time, you really do have power over your life, your choices, your feelings, your thoughts. And there are ways to get up, over, on top of all of these messages that your brain has been feeding you your whole life. And I would say that for people who are really still in the thick of it, find the things that do make you feel good. Even if you're just looking at, how do I feel more expressive? How do I feel more free? What makes me feel good? Sometimes you won't feel joy. I once had a client who every single session she came to therapy, she's like, I don't understand, Mushka. I don't feel joy. I will never feel joy, and I can't feel joy. I'm like, all right, let's not aim for joy. Let's aim for what makes you feel good today. What can bring a smile to your face? And slowly but surely, those things add up. And another message is to take a good look at things. These things don't just start out of nowhere. I really believe in that. Maybe controversial. I believe that there are deep-rooted triggers that have manifested within us for a long time. It goes so deep that we don't even know, that we have to really, really do a lot of work to see them. When did your depression first start? When did your anxiety first start? When does it get triggered? When is it loudest? When does it take over? When does it quieten? And to look at what that may be connected to in your earlier years. Not everything has to be about traumas, but even just, as a kid in school, were you anxious? Did your parents tell you, be quiet, be good, and just listen? And perhaps that made you feel like, oh shoot, I can't say anything. I'm so nervous. And a fear of being loud or outspoken. Did something upset you as a child, and that voice kind of took over, like, wow, this is so hard, this is so bad, this is so sad, and allowed you to sit in it. And so today, as an adult, that's how deep the programming is. You go straight there. We're going to sit in it. So to summarize that piece is to really just look at it and maybe take a few times of journaling or processing, of looking at some prompts. Maybe in this episode I can share underneath some resources that can help you start to look at how to unravel some of those pieces that have just become so natural for you. And again, I am here. I understand. I feel you. I honor your experience and everything that you are going through. And I really, really, really know how hard it is. And I also know that you will be okay, because there was no way that I ever thought I would be okay. And I am here to tell you that it's possible. Thank you for being here. Take what you want, leave the rest, and I can't wait to speak to you soon. Bye-bye.